Hey everyone, Tony D with another hot take. This one is about a lot of things, medical related, I guess. I'll come up with a title later. So, there are a lot of things going on with the virus, and I hate keep harping on the mask because, it's the one thing I called in my life. And, I'm not trying to beat you over the head with it like I'm oh so proud, but I was reminded of why you have to question authority again when I was watching a YouTuber by the name of Ramsey Paul, R-A-M-Z Paul, all one word. And his recent video, he shows a clip of Dr. Fauci on one of the 60 Minutes shows telling everybody why you should not wear a mask, why it's a bad idea, and you just shouldn't do it. Now, this is an example of why you should always question authority and you shouldn't necessarily listen to everything they say, because sometimes they're just wrong. Now, why did Fauci do this? It could be that he's insanely corrupt and evil and that he wants everybody to get sick for some reason. I don't think that's the case. I think the more likely explanation is the sort of, when you're a bureaucrat and you're in a position of power, there's a certain, we can make a decision better than you kind of attitude. Elitism, I guess you'd call it. But they genuinely feel like, well, this is my job, is to make decisions for you. This is why I've been put into this place. I'm an expert and I make the decisions. And I think what probably happened was that the people in the medical side of the government said, well, if we tell people to go out and buy masks, there'll be a run on masks, and then there won't be any masks. And that could be devastating, because at that time, they were thinking, wow, this disease is just going to come roaring in here, and hospitals are going to be overwhelmed, and 2 million people are going to die, and that didn't happen, which is good. It may not have happened because of all the mitigation, all the actions of the government. You could definitely attribute some of that to Trump's ban on travel to China, or China, and other things that they did. So, bravo, you could say, well, maybe the government actually did something right for a change. However, now, things change rapidly, right? So now it looks like those predictions were wildly overblown. Not that anyone's blaming for those predictions being overblown. I made overblown predictions too, but it was based on the evidence at the time. They were saying out of Wuhan, the death rate was 3%. And I was like doing the math in my head and said, oh my God, that could be tens of millions of people in the United States if it gets here, which was part of the reason I was freaking out and wearing a mask so quickly. And then, as the death rate slowly went down, as more evidence came out, I kept revising my numbers and saying, well, it's probably only going to be a few million. And then it was way lower than that. And now, with the and again, I'm not an expert, and that's part of the reason. I was just going on the information I had at that moment, doing the math and saying, crap, a 1% death rate, that's 32 million people in the United States. But it didn't get that bad. We're only at about 60, 70,000. I forget. I haven't checked the death rates in a while nationally. So, you didn't get the expected thing. But we still have a government and state governments who are slow to react the other way. And part of the reason they're slow to react is because they're bureaucrats and politicians. Most people want free stuff, right? They pay the government it's not free, but they pay the government to protect them. So they want to be protected, and they don't want to have to pay for it. So when you ask people, well, should we stop the lockdown? They're like, no, of course not. Why? I'm fine. I'm getting a check, and I'm sitting at home, and I'm good. It can't, for some people. They don't want the lockdown to stop because they're worried about the health consequences. And you should be worried, but you have to really drill down and look at the science. It's now at the point where the percentage of you getting infected and ending up in the hospital, if you're under 50, is less than 1%. It's more than the flu and influenza, and it's not good, but it's really, really, really low. And that, that we have mitigation now, that people are wearing masks, they're social distancing, and they're very conscious of this situation, makes a great difference. If you look at Japan, a very tiny portion of their millions and millions of people have been infected. It's beyond, way lower than 1%. I mean, they've got a few hundred cases, a few hundred deaths, a few hundred cases. That's about it in Japan. And the reason was they all wear masks normally in a flu season. It's just something people do over there, and it's something we may have to start doing here. And it's something I thought about myself. Being a germaphobe, I thought, flu season, why don't I just wear a mask and then I'll be fine? But, you had people in the upper echelons of the U.S. government. And again, I'm not saying they're nefarious, that they want to inject us with microchips to track our every move. However, and this just came out, I think yesterday, the Chicago public health system is already preparing for mass vaccinations there. Like, they already bought the syringes. They were announcing this with some amount of weird glee at a press conference. And, I saw this on one of the, my friend sent me the link. It's one of the more, I'll say, the news networks they're new, and they lean more towards, say, an Alex Jones sort of flavor, more conspiracy. But that didn't change the fact that this woman was gleefully announcing mass vaccinations. Now, why was she gleeful? I would say it's probably because she's a bureaucrat and she can announce something positive to make everybody happy about the virus, that they're all going to be safe. And the moment they get a vaccination, boom, you're going to get one. And then you're not going to have to worry about this crap anymore. That's kind of why she was gleeful. And that was a positive announcement that particular day, and that was going to help her career and help the people. Because, even though she's a bureaucrat, she does deep down want to help the people too. That's been ingrained in her. But the other stuff that hasn't been ingrained with her is the cost, the realistic, expectations of people. The expectations when you announce a vaccine is like, oh, I'll get a vaccine and then I don't have to do anything anymore. No, that's not the case. The flu vaccine is only about 50% effective, like the one you get at Walmart or whatever. That's because viruses mutate so rapidly. By the time they develop a vaccine and mass produce it and send it out, it becomes less and less effective because the virus itself is mutating, and the people who don't get the virus you've protected against can get the new virus, right? So it's sort of like evolution too. It's like when people take antibiotics and they either aren't sick enough to take them, or they only take half of them or whatever, and it ends up creating a virus that's more powerful, that's antibiotic resistant. It's kind of like that, except what you're doing is you're essentially protecting against the weaker cases of the virus, and the stronger cases, which are fewer in number, but they evolve to be stronger. And then, it's a vicious cycle. They got to keep coming up with a new vaccine. But you have to be careful with vaccines. Now, I'm not an anti-vaxxer by any stretch. I believe in vaccines. I think they work. But, like anything that you get from a pharmaceutical company, you got to pump the brakes, because some things they will put out and rush to market, and it turns out, this drug does this, or this drug does that, or this vaccine had a side effect, and we didn't see it until we did studies down the road. There are plenty of drugs like, they were they were prescribing opioids for many years and getting people horribly addicted to them. And they kind of knew, but then they didn't, and it took forever to get to the point where, like, well, we got to be really careful with these now. I mean, that took a long time before we got there. That's the response of the medical community and government. It takes them a long time to get on board with things because, keep in mind, our government is humongous, and they're constantly being bombarded with information. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it just crazy people screaming into the wind. So which things do they listen to? They tend to listen to things that people most complain about. So you have to wait until a problem gets so bad that you finally go, okay, that's a problem we have to fix now. They also are dealing with so many problems. They only deal with problems that get really bad because it's like, well, I've been avoiding that problem this whole time because we only got so many resources, but now it looks like it's gone out of control. Okay, we have to deal with this now. That's the way bureaucracies work. I'll give you an example on a microcosm. You know, in South Jersey, we had a school that I went to, a junior high, and for years, the junior high was, and the junior high has always been at this curve in like a highway. It's not really a highway, but it's a pretty fast road. And for years, there was always people who were like, man, that's a bad intersection. Kids should not cross there, but they would anyway, right? Because they're kids and they just don't care. And there was no crosswalk, no stoplight, nothing. And for years, people crossed there, and there were some problems. People would almost get hit. Some people did get hit, but nobody got killed. And then a kid got killed. In my class, his own mother saw him get hit by a car and killed. She was in a different car. She didn't hit him. But it was a nightmare. And that finally prompted the local officials, okay, we're going to build a stoplight there, and we're going to build a crosswalk there. And then from then on, they had one. From then on, and even then, it took a while. By that time, I had left that particular school and moved on. But you can see how long it takes for government to sort of get out. Now, I've been criticizing Phil for weeks, not opening things up. Part of that is just momentum. Like, Phil doesn't want to open things up because now he's going to have to deal with opening things up. And he's taking his good old time so nobody can accuse him of rushing anything. And so he could say, well, it's all about what he can say down the road. It's not about what, But in his defense, he has been bombarded with information. And part of that information is totally viable scientific data. And part of that are partisans within both parties hitting him with, listen, man, you gotta hang tight and hurt your economy just a little more because we don't want Trump to win. And if you hold out until June, then we expect a recovery and, right around the time the election will be mostly over, and then we could get back in the White House, and then we'll just give you federal aid and you'll be fine. There is some of that going on, but it's not everything. I'm not suggesting it's like a totally 100% corrupt system, but you have to imagine that is at least part of the reason why he's not opening up, because of political pressure from Democrats who say, no, we're trying to beat Trump here, hold out. It's okay. People are fine. We're giving them money. From their perspective, that's fine then. And keep in mind, Democrats are terrible at economics, so they're not really seeing the long-term implications of their actions, really. They think, well, we'll just give them some money later on and it'll all be okay. The other things are, you've got Republicans who are taking advantage of that by saying, you're destroying the economy. You're going to kill us all, and now you want to mass vaccinate us and have Bill Gates put a chip in our bodies so you can know where we are at all times. A lot of that is going to be hyperbolic too, and Phil can't be seen kowtowing to the opposition. He has to look like a guy who made his own decision. So some of that rhetoric is justified, but some of it's only making Phil dig in his heels more. And some of those people are purposely forcing that because they want Phil to dig in his heels, because they've concluded that, well, we can get Phil out of office Trump is fine in their view, but if we can get Phil out, if we can get Phil to dig in his heels and really wreck the economy, then we can get a Republican governor, and then the Republicans can take over New Jersey. So there is all this, machinations going on behind the scenes, because when you're in politics, everything you do is political. So that's why you cannot take anything these people say at face value, even though they seem sincere, even though they sound right, even though they might be right. You have to say, okay, that's one thing. Let's see what other people say. And you have to, again, I've talked about the media. You can't just look at CNN or MSNBC. You got to look around beyond that. You got to look around beyond Fox News and go to sites and things that maybe aren't that credible for a lot of things, but at least they'll show you different perspectives and get you thinking differently. The clip my friend sent me was from a network that, like I said, it's a little more conspiracy oriented. But if you listen to it, you realize, okay, well, he didn't have a lot of information. The newscaster himself didn't have a lot of information. But the clip was information. The clip of the actual official from the Chicago public health system, that was an actual clip, so that was valuable. Same thing with Ramsey Paul. Most of what Ramsey does is opinion, but he did show a clip of Dr. Fauci. That was relevant. So you can learn things outside the normal news cycle and say to yourself, well, even this YouTube video going around, or that was destroyed, is Plandemic, right? So I watched that, and it's an interesting documentary. Now, the interesting thing is it's been taken off of YouTube, and everyone everywhere is telling it, oh, no, this is all conspiracy nonsense. Don't listen to it. That, unfortunately, because so many people are coming out against it, lends it credibility, right? They took it off the internet, and now, it's gone. So that tells people, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you maybe some of it's right, maybe, or someone's worried about their reputation or whatever. Now, I don't know if the thing is right. And again, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but it's very suspicious to me that they would go so hard against the conspiracy nonsense as if they're just wonderful human beings who just want to make sure you don't get the wrong impression. There are plenty of times when people in power and in government want to give you the wrong impression, and they don't give a crap, even when you call them out on it. So that is definitely not the reason they're taking down Plandemic. They're taking it down probably because it hurts somebody's bottom line. It hurts somebody's wallet. It hurts somebody's reputation who's in power. Probably Dr. Fauci for a big part. And because of that, and political reasons too, they've taken it down. Now, that doesn't mean, even if the thing is totally conspiratorial, that it's not of value for you to watch. Because at the very least, it gets you to go, well, maybe Fauci's not a great guy. Let me take a closer look at him. And even if everything in the video turns out to be nonsense, at least you took a closer look at Dr. Fauci, who's dispensing all this advice. And then you might say, well, I didn't think the conspiracy video was very helpful, but now that I look at Fauci, I don't see him as a squeaky clean white knight who's here to save us. He seems to have some ties to pharmaceutical companies and patents that may or may not be involved with this cure. And so maybe he's got way more political and financial reasons for saying what he's saying than he does just being an altruistic bureaucrat who wants to save everybody. So this is why you always have to question authority. You don't have to believe it, and you don't have to totally discount it, but you have to question it, so you examine it and make up your own mind. Anyhow, that's my hot take. Thank you for listening. Please check out my books, Wokeistan, a Novel, and The Pineys, available at Amazon.com, ebook, trade paperback, Kindle Unlimited is free.